Walk into a dark room right now and stand still for 10 seconds. Notice what your body does without asking permission. Your pulse rises slightly. Your ears sharpen. Your eyes strain toward every corner. That's not nerves. That's 2 million years of programming, running exactly as designed. Let's start with the biology first, because the fear makes a lot more sense once you understand what your eyes are actually working with. Human eyes are built almost entirely for daylight. Your retina is packed with two types of light-sensing cells: cones, which handle color and detail in bright conditions, and rods, which handle low light. Cones outnumber rods in the most detail-sensitive part of your vision by a wide margin. That trade-off is great at noon. At night, it falls apart. Drop the light level far enough, and your color vision disappears almost entirely. Your depth perception flattens, and your ability to make out a still shape more than a few feet away collapses. Now compare that to almost anything that hunted your ancestors. Lions, leopards, and hyenas all share something your eyes don't have: a structure called the tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina that bounces light back through the eye a second time, giving nocturnal predators roughly 6 to 8 times better night vision than yours. Their eyes get a second pass at the light. Yours only get one. It's the same structure that makes a cat's eyes glow when a flashlight hits them. Your ancestors didn't have it. They never developed it. For the entire span of human evolution, the animals most likely to kill you could see you clearly in conditions where you were functionally blind. That's not a mild disadvantage at all. That's the single most dangerous imbalance a prey animal can have. So the fear didn't start as superstition. It started as an accurate read of the actual odds. Your ancestors weren't defenseless against this problem, though. They just solved it socially instead of biologically. Anthropologists studying contemporary hunter-gatherer groups have documented a consistent pattern. Nobody sleeps alone, and nobody sleeps in true darkness if they can help it. Safety wasn't sharper eyes, it was more eyes. A fire gets tended through the night in shifts. Sentries take turns staying half alert. The group's actual defense against poor night vision was never better eyesight. It was numbers and light, and the simple fact that a predator is far less likely to approach a cluster of watchful humans than a single sleeping one, which means the fear you feel alone in the dark isn't just about vision, it's about isolation. Ask people what specifically makes darkness unsettling, and being physically alone consistently ranks as one of the strongest amplifiers, far more than darkness by itself. Your ancestors weren't just afraid of not seeing, they were afraid of not seeing without backup. But knowing you're at a disadvantage doesn't fully explain the specific way this fear behaves, and that's where the real research gets interesting. In 1997, researcher Christian Grillin and colleagues at the National Institute of Mental Health ran an experiment that measured something called the acoustic startle reflex, the automatic flinch your body produces in response to a sudden loud noise. They tested this reflex in both light and darkness. The results were consistent. People startled significantly harder in the dark, not because anything dangerous was actually present, not because they'd been told to expect a threat. The darkness itself, with absolutely nothing else changed, was enough to prime the nervous system into a heightened defensive state. Your brain doesn't wait for evidence of danger in the dark. It assumes it by default. This isn't limited to a passing jolt from a loud noise, either. Sleep researchers have found that anxiety disorders frequently come with a measurable preference for sleeping with some light source on: a lamp, a hallway light, a phone screen left face up. The light isn't comfort, it's evidence, proof the room is empty. And removing it can measurably worsen sleep onset in people already prone to anxious arousal. Clinicians who treat anxiety sometimes describe this as the nervous system refusing to fully stand down while ambiguity is present. And darkness is one of the most reliable ways to manufacture ambiguity out of an otherwise completely safe room. There's a name for part of what's driving this. Cognitive scientists call it a hyperactive agency detection device, first described in detail by researcher Justin Barrett. The idea is that your brain evolved to be extremely biased toward assuming ambiguous sounds and shapes are caused by something alive, something with intent, rather than something harmless. A branch cracking outside your tent could be the wind. It could also be a predator. Evolution didn't reward the humans who calmly assumed it was the wind and were wrong. It rewarded the ones who assumed the worst every single time and were occasionally right. That's a system built entirely around one specific kind of error being far cheaper than the other. A false alarm costs you a racing heart for a few seconds. A missed real threat costs you your life. Over enough generations, that math builds a brain that would rather be wrong constantly than right just once too late. here's where it gets stranger. This isn't something children have to learn by being told scary stories. In the early 1900s, psychologist G. Stanley Hall conducted one of the first large-scale surveys of childhood fears, collecting thousands of reports from parents across different countries and cultures. Fear of the dark appeared near the top of the list almost everywhere he looked, regardless of the specific culture, regardless of what stories that culture actually told its children. Later research tracking fear development found that nyctophobia, fear of darkness, typically emerges spontaneously somewhere between ages 2 and 4, often before a child has been exposed to any frightening stories about the dark at all. The fear shows up on schedule. Nobody has to install it. Which raises an obvious question for anyone living now, surrounded by streetlights, phone flashlights, and rooms that are never actually pitch black. If the entire system evolved because ancient humans were genuinely defenseless at night, why hasn't it faded, now that almost none of us are in real danger walking to our car after dark? The honest answer is that 2 million years of selection pressure doesn't get erased by 200 years of electric light. Evolution operates on a timescale so much slower than technological change that your nervous system is, for practical purposes, still calibrated for a world that mostly stopped existing a few centuries ago. The lion is gone. The reflex that lion built is still fully installed, and it doesn't check the news before firing. There's a strange irony buried in how modern life has actually handled this. Cities didn't cure the fear of darkness. They just moved the goalposts. We didn't eliminate the trigger. We just rebuilt it. Researchers studying urban environments have found that people report feeling most uneasy specifically in poorly lit or unevenly lit areas, not areas that are simply dark, but areas where visibility is inconsistent patches of shadow, next to patches of light, exactly the kind of unpredictable. Half-visible environment. Your ancestors' threat detection system was built to flag as maximally suspicious. A streetlight with a gap in its coverage recreates, almost perfectly, the exact visual pattern that used to mean a predator was close but not yet identified. This is why the feeling shows up in situations that make no logical sense. An empty, familiar hallway in your own home suddenly feels different with the lights off, even though nothing in that hallway has changed, except the amount of light hitting your retina. Your rational mind already knows there's nothing there. The much older system running underneath it isn't interested in what your rational mind knows. It's interested in ambiguity, and darkness is the single most ambiguous condition your senses can be placed in. So the next time you find yourself listening a little too carefully in a dark room, or walking a little faster through an unlit parking lot, understand what's actually happening. You're not being irrational. You're running one of the oldest, most consistently useful pieces of software your species ever built. Installed for a world where the things that could see you in the dark could also kill you in the dark, and where the humans who took that seriously generation after generation were the ones who survived long enough to actually have children. The lion never has to actually be there. Your body was built by the ones who acted like it might be every single time for 2 million years without exception.